Get to know Felischa Marye. She's an incredible screenwriter and also the creator and showrunner of the hit show Bigger on BET Plus.
As the creator of the hit new show Bigger on BET Plus, it's a pleasure to welcome you, Felischa Marye, to the Shundria Show. How are you today?
I'm well, thank you. Thank you.
Well, you're here in Los Angeles, right?
Yes.
Okay.
La La Land. Yeah.
And you're from Chicago like me.
Originally from
how long have you been here in LA?
I've been here since 2011.
Okay.
Yeah.
Almost 10 years. It's surviving in LA. That is a feat.
I know. It's coming up on 10 years. That's crazy.
That is a feat. My gosh. So when you set out to leave Chicago to come to LA, what were your aspirations at that point versus where you are today?
Well, actually my aspirations, you mean when I got here, what were they? They were literally this. It was really, I moved here to go to film school at UCLA, the screenwriting, MFA program. I, wrote out my goals I think before I got here or when I got here, and they were really lofty, and, they were like, oh, I want to sell. I didn't know how uncommon it was to do any of these things, but I set some lofty goals, and I'm like, I want to sell something before I leave school. I want to be repped. I don't even know what else I said. I want to win awards, but actually all those things actually happened. I mean, I wasn't fully repped. I think I had a manager, and I kind of had an unofficial agent by the time I graduated, but I did sell something. I did. Eventually I wanted to have my own show, which I have now. So I'm in the point of, I'm like, oh, it's fun. It's time to recalibrate the dream and be like, oh gosh, well, I don't have all my dreams. And of course I have a long way to go, you know what I'm saying? But like my initial dreams, I've kind of gotten to some of those. And now I'm like having to look back and say, how can I dream bigger? And yes, I have a shirt that says that, bigger. I was like, I just picked this up. Like, is this a shameless plug? And it is. But I rarely wear this.
Plug your show.
I didn't really mean to, but I was like, oh, I don't wear this a lot. And then I'm like, oh, and I have this interview. So my friends got it made for a screening in Chicago. But so those are my goals. And, I don't want to sound like I'm bragging, but I'm just like, oh shit, I'm sorry, can I cuss on here? I had to relook at what's bigger, and that's what the show is about. It's about sometimes when you hit a place, and especially if it's in your dream world, it's in where you want it to be, you get to this place of like, well, I have to think even bigger than this, because you put big dreams down, the universe will bring you those dreams if that's what's meant for you. And then if you get them, you're in the place where you are wondering, should I be looking at something bigger and better, a bigger life, so that, limit myself, basically.
I love that it encourages you to continue to dream. Because, what if you were never a writer? What if it didn't work out for you? You see what I'm saying? But because, the opportunities came, you're living your dreams from 10 years ago. Like, I'm so glad that it encourages you to set forth even more dreams. I'm glad it ignited that in you. Like, I'm going to dream some more then.
Right. Yeah. When you don't really think beyond the dream, right? Like, you're just like, oh, my dream is to be a writer, and I want to have my own show one day. Whatever that looks like. And I want to produce movies or whatever. And so it's like, okay, well, I have that. So let me look at movies now. Like, you don't think about if you get there as much, like what happens next. You know what I'm saying? So that is interesting because it's my dream job, but I still feel inspired to keep dreaming again, just because there's abundance in the universe for us. So like, why not want more? If more is what you want,
So prior to creating your own show, you were one of the writers on 13 Reasons Why, which is an original series on Netflix. So this is another point in, your dream phase where you were like, I want to write, for television. Is that something, it's like for writers out there that are watching this that, how do you get these type of opportunities? What should they be investing their energy into if they want those type of opportunities to come?
There are, it's very much a journey. Like people, I may know some people in Chicago who might write on the side or something like, hey, you can hire me for your show. And I'm just like, sis or bruh or whoever it is. Like, it's not like that. It's a long journey of investment of time and money. And I say that because for me to move to LA, I used film school as a vehicle to, be able to quit my job, take out student loans to at least live off of and get here. But that's a hell of an investment. I could be a lawyer by now with that level of investment, so it's so competitive. You have to do as much as you can to get validated by third parties, whether that's a film school. And then you have work on that validation even after that. Like I was validated by, I went to film school, but then that's almost baseline, like almost everybody does. So what else can make me stand out? Oh, I was in a fellowship. Well, because agents and managers, they look to see who's winning the top writing contests, who is the class, who are the people in the class that's coming out of the ABC Writing Fellowship or the NBC Writers on the Verge program. So I say that writers should educate themselves, and that can take years. Like it took me 2 or 3 years in film school, and I was trying to teach myself before that in Chicago, realizing I really couldn't teach myself to the level that I can compete with people who have A, been doing this for years, or B, who've had formal education at like big film schools, right? So I just had to make myself competitive and stand out, and that's what other writers have to do. And that's often through being validated by some other third party where people can end up finding you, whether it's winning a contest or getting into a writer's program or fellowship. And the ones that matter, unfortunately, every competition doesn't matter. Once you start to Google ones and like where top writers come from, like competitions they won or fellowships they completed, like, if you look at some of your favorite shows and see who some of the writers are, look up their bios and see what they did. The more you know about like other people's journey, it's no one way to do this. Like people could skip all of that, like never go to film school and get it, those are all like more exceptions to the rule. The more traditional thing is to learn the craft somehow, some way, however you choose to find your voice, which can take a couple of years. Because you can be like, I started off writing character-driven dramas that were films, and then I ended up going into comedy television within my film school time in film school. So I didn't know what my voice was, I didn't know how the industry was going to respond to my voice or which voice they responded more to, the dramatic voice or the comedic voice, So some of that is a journey. So I didn't start working until 3 years ago. And in terms of professional working I had sold a pilot in film school in 2013, 14. But later, I didn't get staffed until 2017. So, that's 2011 to 2017. And that was considered kind of a fast journey because I got out.
You have to learn to stay the course.
Stay the course, yeah. You have to stay the course and know that it's a long journey. It's not a sprint. And that I think that, that weeds people out, So that only leaves the most committed at that point.
That's encouraging. You're such an inspiration. My gosh, I'm so proud of you.
Thank you so much. That's crazy.
Tell me about your premise of Bigger in your own words. Because I've watched the series. I absolutely loved it. You left us a cliffhanger at the end. Like, who is she going to choose?
Thank you. The premise is I have 5 friends in Atlanta who were college friends who are in their mid-30s, and they're at the place in their life where they're wondering if there's something bigger than better than where they currently are. And it's inspired, by like my journey to writing. The idea that, in my mid-30s, I had accomplished most of the things I thought I wanted to accomplish within that field in Chicago, which was PR in advertising, marketing. And I got the condo, had the luxury car or whatever that, whatever I thought I wanted. And then was like, I hate this. or basically I always wanted to be in Hollywood. I always wanted to do something in the industry. At first it was an actress when I was like 19 or as a teenager, but then eventually I got scared of that and I changed my major from acting in undergrad to broadcast journalism, and that's how I kind of ended up in PR. And before I knew it, I was just living somebody else's life or something, because I never said, hey, I want to be a PR person, even though it wasn't awful, it wasn't my dream, or it wasn't anything that really gave me, I liked it, I didn't love it. It was doable, but I couldn't, it wasn't sustainable because there was something else clearly that I knew I wanted to do more. So that's what inspired it. And this thematic question of, do you pick pleasure or responsibility? And so that can mean career. Is it something I love or something that feels more responsible, something that feels more guaranteed or secure? In your love life, do I pick the guy who gives me excitement? Do I pick the guy who feels secure? And that is what one of the main characters in the show, one of the 5 friends, Lane, is experiencing. She's made the decision to open her own business, which we catch her when it's not doing so well, leaving a corporate America. But doing that has also triggered her to question other things in her life, like her love life and her boyfriend, who's has an amazing resume, but who, is lacking in some areas. And she meets somebody who's not lacking in that area. And it's the thing of like, should I give one up for the other? Which is more important? Why do I have to make a choice? But if I make a choice, which should I choose?
And I feel like 30s and 40s are about those choices. What
Absolutely.
is the safer bet, or doing something where you feel something when you get out of bed every day. So,
Yeah.
it's definitely relatable, I feel like, at any adult age. And so I love the premise of the show. I was watching a special of yours where you talked about breaking the fourth wall and how you use a lot of visual effects on the show, like the birds and things like that. Where did that creative element come from, and why did you want to use that?
Well, actually, in developing season 1, I was working with a showrunner, Devon Shepard, who, when we met, when I was looking for a showrunner to help me, because a lot of creators, I recommend this, should work with experienced showrunners. A lot of networks will partner you up with experienced showrunners, because you don't know what you're doing as a first-time, creator. And so Devon's great. He comes from like Mad TV and like Weeds and Everybody Hates Chris, and just, he's been around 25 years and sees what the potential is with comedy and how creative you can be. And we were talking about like white shows getting to have all the fun, meaning they can be crazy, they can be extreme, and we wanted to do something similar. He asked me if I had seen Fleabag, and I hadn't at the time. It was only season 1, and when I saw it within 5 minutes, I was like, LOVE. I texted him like, I love this, because the breaking of the fourth wall, when we talked about it, I wasn't sure if that would be a cheat, because sometimes, like especially in film school, they're like voiceovers and narration can be a cheat, because it'll be like, all my life I've lived in this town, and it's like, can we just see you live in that town? Why you gotta tell us?
And that's so common though too, the voiceovers with the shows. So I like that she talks to the camera like that.
Oh yeah, it's just how you use it. And I saw how it was used in Fleabag. It basically stole it. But it was, the camera's like a friend, you know what I'm saying? Versus like, I'm just gonna tell you everything so that I don't have to be a good writer, So
I'm still gonna show you, but I'm gonna tell you what I'm doing too.
Right, exactly. But if cleverly done, and I think Fleabag does it cleverly, I use that as my inspiration. And the same thing with the animation. At first I was resistant to, I'm like, I want it to be grounded. But then I thought about how a movie because this is a heightened movie, she's talking the fourth wall. So it's not like it's so grounded, like, because that's not real. And I thought of like 9 to 5, like the movie 9 to 5 that has a fantasy sequence where Lily Tomlin, this is such an old movie, but it's Lily Tomlin imagines that she's like Snow White and all these birds are flying in, and she's actually about to try to murder somebody. But before that happens, she's Snow White and these cartoon birds are so that's where so then I called him back like, okay, birds, it could be like a 9 to 5, so it was one of those things where we talked about these creative elements. I resisted on some of them and then thought, we should, because this is already a fantastical world. So yeah, it was result of conversation and brainstorming and trying to figure out what we wanted the show to be compared to others. Or he asked me, what did I want? Because I had another script called Peachtree Place that was developed for regular BET. And then they said that, and I kind of took every note that I got on that. You know, I didn't know how to sort of take notes. That's another level. Once you become a writer, you have to learn how to take notes, take what you need, leave the rest behind, or find your, you know, show within, you know, people.
Your notes or someone else's notes?
Someone else's notes.
Okay.
Like, or other people. It's, you know, a team of people. But it just basically, you know, it's hard to, when you're developing, to take collaboration from everyone and then have the same thing you start off with or something similar. So I think I just got lost in the process a little bit. So I was kind of happy to find out that BET Plus was going to be a thing, because then I was able to throw that out and start over, because my voice is way edgier, as you can see. I cuss a lot. I was never God saved me, basically. I was never the right person for regular BET, because I wanted to have like no limits. And that's how I ended up on BET Plus and with Bigger.
You said the other show was called Peachtree Place.
Yeah.
I noticed the show that Bigger takes place in Atlanta. You're from Chicago, you live in LA, but your show that you create takes place in Atlanta.
That was a request.
Okay.
That was a request from the producers and the network. Yeah. So I would have said, but I'm glad it was a request, because this show couldn't exist in Chicago in the same way, just because of the way Atlanta is like the new LA. And that's part of the premise. You know, part of the premise is the thirst, is the ambition, is like, I'm trying to come up. You know what I'm saying? Like, that energy exists in it. And I wouldn't have come up with that as a premise had it been set in Chicago. Probably would have been a different kind of premise, because the energy is different. But the show I sold in film school was set in Chicago, in Bronzeville. And I like little neighborhoods, you know, in a metropolis, you know.
That's awesome. You touch on a socioeconomic issue, gentrification. Why was that important for you to address in your own way?
Because I like to talk about like the Black culture, but I like to talk about subcultures within cultures, and class defines us or separates us within the culture in certain ways. So I'm always interested in the things that there's a gray area, topics that have a gray area when it comes to white and Black people because of class. Because I wonder, sometimes we make race a thing, but often the real thing, if people would just wake up, is class. Like if poor whites would not be voting for Trump if they understood that they're not on the same team. Just because you have white skin, that's the trick. They try to make you think you're on the same team, so they'll be, you know, because it's 2% of rich, super rich people, so they'd be robbed, beaten, and you know what I'm saying? Like, they're in the minority, so to make themselves bigger, they align with poor whites who are like, yeah, we're on the same team. So how are we on the same team as whites when we class out of the hood or something? And I hate to say the hood, but you know what I'm saying. When we class out of the neighborhoods we grew up in, you know what I'm saying? Because we went to, you know, like the neighborhood I grew up in, I didn't want to live in once I was an adult, just because it's not necessarily, I don't know if it's unsafe, but it's definitely, you try to move up, right? And so in trying to move up, how are we different from white people when we gentrify a neighborhood? We're hoping the crackhead on 45th and Drexel moves out too. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I wanted to, because that's where I lived. I lived on 45th. Okay. And I bought my condo on 45th and Drexel. And so when the whites were coming in town, I'm like, coming in the neighborhood, I'm like, okay, property value is going to go up. I mean, these are things we don't want to admit that we think.
Right, you do think
that. And then we're hoping the crackheads leave. Like, we're hoping the same thing. But the difference is that we have the potential to be more caring and generous and compassionate. That's the word about it.
Yeah, where you're not gonna be like, call 7 police officers over here to get the crackhead out.
Exactly. And when we're challenged, when our Blackness is challenged, or our loyalty to the culture is challenged, when our class puts us in another group, what do? What is the decision we make? So I just wanted to like have that conversation in the show.
Awesome. And out of all your characters, do you relate to any particular storyline or experience?
Lane is my literal voice. Like, it's probably the way I speak or my neurosis. Like, she's my neurotic self. But everybody is a bit of me in some way. Like, I can turn up. I do like, to turn, on a case. I mean, mine is subtle, but it's still inside. I'm turned up. I like the energy of turned upness. And so that's my Tracy. I'm not a social media person or anything, but like the hey with like I love trap music. You know what I'm saying? Like there's and then with Veronica, I do have a thing where but she's mostly one of my best friends, but I also have the very same thing where I can sort of say whatever's on my mind quick, like quick-witted, like.
Or maybe the competitive spirit that she has, maybe that's relatable for you?
I don't have that. I don't have that. I mean, I'm competitive in that I'm like, oh, I need to do more, or I'm not doing enough, but I'm not like, I gotta be
yourself. You're like,
it's more of myself. Yeah. I'm not like, that was just, that came up in the room somehow, in the writer's room, because we were like, half the time when you get bigger, you are competing with someone, but sometimes that enemy doesn't even know they're an enemy. Right. And that was a joke there. Yeah. Like you can create your own nemesis.
Right.
Mine. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you had an amazing cast and crew on the show. I know you worked with, is it Devin, and an amazing cast crew. What was that experience like being on set prior to COVID and all these, new rules and laws?
I know, that was last year. We're waiting on production now because just not sure how this is going to work. Okay. But wait, what was the question? Oh yeah, so how was it? How was it? Oh, it was a lot of fun. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Everybody's so talented, and everybody was excited about the script. So it felt like it was going to be a special project. Even when, because throughout the whole thing, I'm like, am I crazy or is this funny? Like of course
we're laughing in the rehearsals and on set and things like that.
Oh, totally. Yeah. So every take was damn near funny. So yeah, it was an amazing experience actually.
Awesome. Well, with so much going on in the world, I'm so grateful for your time today. What word of advice do you have for any creatives out there who feel unmotivated right now to produce content?
You're talking to the wrong person. No, it's a struggle. It's a struggle for me, especially as a comedy writer, because sometimes I'm like looking at CNN all day and I don't want to laugh. So I'm struggling with it, and what I'm trying to do is just create and stick to a schedule where and not because this is a weird time where deadlines are sort of floating and no one knows what they're doing next, and so I'm deadline oriented, so that could be weird because it's like I don't know when I'm gonna have to do this because I don't know when we're doing it. So I think that being more structured is helpful, especially at home, because it's hard to be structured at home. And this is what I know. So that I had put a script down that for a long time that I was just like unmotivated. And then when I did pick it up and I got into it, I started to laugh and, all that stuff. So I would say it's like exercise. It's probably like you just got to make yourself start. That's what I mean, I don't have all the answers because I'm trying to figure it out too, because this is a time where it's a lot of weight on your mental space, your mental capacity, you know what I mean? And that's what we use to write. So I would say structure and knowing that it'll be over is helpful, and just starting. Yep.
Be motivated to take action.
Yeah, absolutely.
You are an inspiration. Congratulations on creating your very own show that's broadcasting on BET Plus app right now. Can you plug the show and tell us what we got to do to watch it and catch up on it?
BET Plus, you can get it through Amazon Prime. You can get it through Apple TV, Roku, basically Chromecast, all the Fire Stick, all the streaming services. And there's a week free trial. Or you can download the app directly. Or there's a week free trial, a 7-day free trial. So you could probably binge it in that time if you want it.
And how can you follow your creative journey online?
Oh yes, my Instagram is at Felischa M, FELISCHAM, and then Twitter is at Felischa.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time today. You're absolutely wonderful.